Sounds
Oh my
great.
gosh, it's so good to see you.
It's excellent to see you. Hey, I had to pull this vintage hoodie
Yeah.
out of the closet just to, in homage of where we started, all the good and all the bad. But I just realized I got to get me like a Wayfinding Academy hoodie or something.
Oh yeah, we've got shirts. We haven't made hoodies yet, but
All
I
right.
will. You know what? We should probably start making hoodies now. I think it's been long enough.
It's really it matches the nice cold weather in Portland and whatnot. But Michelle Jones, I you're so humble. I always forget you're a doctor. I saw your PhD on your Twitter, and
Oh yeah.
I was like, maybe I should just address her as the doctor or Dr. Jones.
No, probably not. No.
But yeah, thank you for just randomly commenting on my social media posts and then even being even more crazy to agree to just come talk with me for a little bit and talk about you and
Yeah.
how amazing Wayfinding Academy is and catch up a little bit. This
I'm so
morning,
excited that you're doing this. Like, I don't know. It feels like I don't know how long have we known each other? It's been like 10 years, I think.
many moons.
Is that
Yes,
right? Something like
it's
that?
it's close. I mean, I think I went to my first year, maybe like not, we're approaching 10. I feel like is what it is. Like not
Yeah.
quite 10 yet. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
something like that. I don't know. I feel like from when we very, very first talked, like doing something like this is something you've been talking about for a while. Not this exactly, because we didn't have all these technologies that we talked about
sure.
back then, but just the idea of like talking to people and community formation and helping
Yeah.
people figure out what they want to do and amplifying voices. I don't know. This is like, I don't know. This is perfect for you.
I think my story is not unique in the fact that it's like how you said, I've always talked about it. And it's like, hey, when are we going to do some action, buddy? Like, when are we going to get something going? And I know everyone's story is different, but I mean, not that 2020 needs to be brought up anymore, but I mean, how crazy of like just a space was that created around me to just be like, are you gonna like do something or what? Like, this is the perfect time to start pumping it out. And then so I just was like, you know what? I don't know what it's gonna look like. I have no idea. All the, there's no great plan, but it's time to go to work, time to do something. So I'm excited to keep figuring out what this exactly is.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know. I mean, I know that with wayfinding, it takes a while. If you're going to create something brand new from scratch, it just takes a while of learning what you want that to be and like getting closer and closer. And finally, you just take the leap. But there's a
No.
long process before that most people don't see. So I agree. I think you're not unique in that way. I think that's how a lot of things start.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you've been doing this work. I mean, you've been coaching and doing all this stuff over all these years. You just are
Yeah.
now putting it in a different format, I'd say.
Yeah. I think that's what it is for sure. I think my life's creed or mantra or the manifesto of my life is rooted in living aloha, right? Just which is not a unique thing either. Like people who operate and love, and they want to put that into the world. It's not unique, but growing up in Hawaii and trying to maintain that those roots and that flavor, I think is my version of everything. And I guess Live Aloha. Yeah, I've started that volleyball academy, and we're doing that and coaching and continuing to coach in college. I'm at Lewis and Clark now, so that's been fun. And then just this, I don't know. I'm sure you have connected with more people that I should probably pick your brain about, and like just the just content, like putting stuff out there seems to be just like, if you're not doing it like in 5 years, you're going to be like, oh dang, like I really wish I would have put stuff out. And I think, I don't know if you remember Jordan Rear or not, but
Yeah,
a
of course.
very, very, very good friend. Yeah, right. Of course. Who does it? But a good friend of mine, I always think of him in regards to like, well, so if you live aloha, but you don't post about it, like, does it still
Huh.
count? Like, does it still count? Like, why is it that you have to, like, he hasn't ever told me that directly. Like, why do you have to like post about it or whatever? Right. But it's always a unique question, right? Because it's like, oh, like, is this all just like some big show or whatever, But I think going back to something you brought up earlier, I think it's just for me and more so about like using this tool of social media to like build this community for people who are already doing stuff like this, who are already living aloha in their life, or maybe potentially people who like, I don't know, need some of that in their life. You know, I know there's a lot of people who need some of that from time to time, you know, in different aspects or whatever. But yeah, sorry, I don't know what it is about you that makes me get on my soapbox.
No, I don't totally understand. Well, I don't know. I think it's just like a good reflection right now, because I am struggling with the same thing, because one of the things I'm working on right now, which is very strange for me, is because I created Wayfinding Academy, not so that it's about me, but so that it's like to create a different kind of college and to help students and to help more people live life on purpose. And we've been doing it now for 5 years, and we've reached the point where to level up as an organization, I now have to like create my own character as like the founder of Wayfinding. And so I now have all my own, like I have my own Twitter account, which I didn't have a year ago. And you know, and I have my own website that's new, and I'm starting to write blog posts and put them on Medium. And like behind the scenes, fun fact, that tweet that I made to Live Aloha yesterday was not me. It was, starting this month, I have like an assistant who helps me with like creating the character of Michelle Jones, founder of Wayfinding. And it was his first tweet ever that he tweeted, you know, exactly. So I hear you. And I guess I hear you by extension, I hear Jordan, right, saying like, there's like, you can do all the work that you want to do in the world, and that's excellent. And that you can have a bigger impact and help other people if you also let other people see what you're doing. And that's been hard for me, because I never want it to be like about me. I want it to be about Wayfinding and the mission and the vision. And we're learning that it actually has to be both. To get to the next stage, it actually has to be both me and Wayfinding that get us there.
I guess you're starting to talk about the follow-up question that I was just about to ask. Like, what does that mean? Like, you have to create this character to, the phrase you used was like level up. So that could potentially mean like expand or reach more people or help more people or whatever it may be. But that's an interesting phrase, to like create this character of the founder of Wayfinding. So what's that all about? That's awesome.
Yeah, it's super new and kind of weird, but like I've always thought of Wayfinding having two missions, right? One is helping more people live life on purpose, and like doing the actual work of having a college and having students and having classes and changing the lives of those students and, you know, anybody who does classes or events with us. So there's that, like the small college in Portland, Oregon aspect of it. But and now I have a really amazing team doing all of that, taking care of all of that. So now I get to step, after 5 years, into this role of really focusing more time on the second mission, which is nudging change in the higher education industrial complex. It's like to help dismantle systemic racism that's happening there, and just like barriers to actual learning, and not really treating students as whole humans. So to do that work, we need a character who can like go out in the world and, I don't know, interact with people on Twitter or speak at conferences or, you know, give talks or do whatever, or, you know, get media coverage or write op-eds or whatever that is. Eventually, the plan is that we're working on writing a book, like a book about my life and how Wayfinding came to be, and and to try to help encourage other people who want to do things that, you know, might be world changing or community changing, understand like what that process is like, and help them see themselves in that story. So we've been just trying to figure out, how do we create, in addition to having my team do all of the great work to keep the Portland campus running and thriving, how do we also level up to having a bigger reach and a bigger, like, I guess bigger impact on higher education as an industry, and also letting more people know about us who don't already know about us. So that's where the character creation comes in. I mean, it's not much of a character. I mean, I'm just being myself. We're not like having me do anything I don't normally do. But like, I don't know, as the executive leader of an organization, I have to do a lot of like management of my team and, you know, all these things that I never prepared to do before. As a teacher, as a professor, I didn't have to do any of this. And now I have to like manage budgets and stuff like this.
Very
So,
exhilarating work,
oh
I'm
gosh,
sure. Yeah.
exciting. It's so exciting.
Yeah.
No, so now I have an assistant. He is great. We're kind of calling him like my magician. And
Love it.
he is doing all this behind the scenes, making things happen. And he's going to help me write things and hold me accountable for all of that, and like tweet on my behalf every once in a while. He's only done it once so far, but
There you
whatever.
go. Hey, good. I'm glad that we were the practice run, or the first run, the trial run.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So I'm just, you've stroked my curiosity. So the verbiage of like creating this character, is that something that you were like intentional, like in a meeting, you're like, okay, we got to grow and blah, 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 blah. And so like, was that something that you came up with, or is it a colleague or someone on your team that like was like, that used that verbiage, like create a character? Because in my mind,
Yeah.
like as I'm hearing you talk about it, I'm like, yeah, like I hear what you're saying about that. And like those who create content and do anything, there is some kind of like front on two ends. One, it's like you, right? It's like, okay, I got to go out and do a talk or be on YouTube or whatever. In some ways, that is a character, right? But then in other ways, it's how other people like perceive you, right? If other people write an article about you, they're like, Michelle Jones, the founder of Wayfinding Academy, which is like, but you also probably like to go for walks, or
Right.
like that's there's also this not character you. I don't, as you can see, I'm just so curious about all this.
Yeah, it's a great, I haven't really thought about it. I think it was a series of things that happened. Before I started Wayfinding, I got advice from a few people who I trusted, who had been involved in founding other things. And way back then, somebody who I knew like through a friend, I didn't know her very well, but she said her biggest piece of advice on like when she founded a thing or when she led a nonprofit organization was that you had to have characters that were larger than life, that like in this case, help the students create their narrative of what their story is like. So like, it could be somebody who just shows up and appears once or twice a year in the student's experience, but like they have a big enough character and a big enough impact that it's larger than life and it's memorable and it's remarkable. So like it gets part of the history and the tradition. I did not start out that way at Wayfinding. Like I did not start out as a character. I was like part of the students' every single day experience. And now, like I just finished writing cards to all of our alumni, like handwritten New Year cards to all of our alumni, because I know them all super well personally, like they're friends of mine. Yeah. So I didn't start out as a character, but now that we're 5 years in, we're about to have cohort 7 start with us. Wow. And the students who are newer don't know me as well. And so about a couple of years ago, someone told me, we brought in somebody who was having a conversation with our students about how did they find out about wayfinding, and like we were redoing our website to be like, hey, how does the website need to change? I love dog appearances.
My dog, yes, of course. Lilo, she's making it a habit. She came on yesterday. Okay, Lilo,
here's she's so cute.
Your opportunity to, be on the podcast again. Here you go.
Oh my goodness, how old is she?
She is 4 months. 5.
She's so cute.
Yeah, I stopped counting the weeks because I was getting all paranoid. I was like, oh my gosh, this is happening so fast. So it's like, she's like 4 or 5 months. I don't know. But of course,
she's still kind of new to you, huh?
She's little, still very much little puppers. And I used to close that door, but then she'd like try to knock it in, right. And then I'd have to get. So I was like, you know what? This is real life. I'm just gonna let her walk around. This is her house too, so I'm not gonna do all this stuff. Anyway, sorry for I'm not. I'm not sorry. I'm glad Lilo could make her appearance.
Yeah, she's great. I'm glad I got to meet her.
Yes, cool.
So the feedback we got back then was that these students who were, they were kind of new at wayfinding at the time, and they said one of the things that made a difference in their application process, like when they were going through what we call matchmaking. We don't have like an admissions department, we have like a matchmaker. Mm-hmm. And during that process, they said one thing that stuck out to all of them was like what the students called the Michelle effect. That at some point during their process, I showed up, like just doing what I would normally do. Like I was part of their, like when they came to get a tour, or I was part of the team that interviewed them to make sure it was a good match, or I don't know, whatever. So they started calling this the Michelle effect. So then slowly the organization started using me as like a character. So I don't I'm sort of hands off now on the student recruitment and matchmaking stuff, but they make sure that every time there's a prospective student, I show up and meet them at some point. So I've become this like larger than life character. And now the office that I'm in right now, it's like downstairs in the far back corner of the building, so that like I used to have the front office right by the front door. So like everybody saw me all the time. Students, like I was the first person students interacted with. And we've now made the intentional choice to have me like down here in the back, so that they know where I am. I'm always available, but they have to like come to me, and the rest of the team gets to do the day-to-day stuff. So the final thing that set this off is that I've been working with an executive coach for the past year, which was also a weird thing to do because I don't know, I just didn't think of myself as an executive kind of whatever, but he's been great. And he's also the one who's like, you know, wayfinding can get so far on its own with its reach and it's like what we do as an organization. But, you know, most things that are creating movements have a person behind them, right? So like the movement to change higher education needs a person and a personality that's real, that's a real actual human that can interact in that way. So he said, you've really got to, he's the one who made me get a Twitter account and, you know, all this stuff. So anyway, so yeah, it's been kind of I think it's been a lot of those little things come together. So maybe I'm a slow learner because you know, the first piece of advice was like 7 years ago and like it took me a while.
But regardless of how fast any of us learn, you've always seemed to have this same spirit about you that like, I'm just going to learn and continue to challenge status quo and just like, I'm just going to, I don't know. That was always the impression that I've gotten from you when you were a teacher of mine. And the rest of me following on the sidelines, watching the amazing things that you've been doing unfold. I'm always just like, wow, it's a very attractive energy to be like, yeah, I want to be that curious. Like I want to do the things that, you know, they're doing as well, which I think is, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if a core pillar of like Wayfinding Academy is like, yeah, like I'm just, however things are doing it, I'm not going to do it that way anymore. I had really considered like walking you through like, oh yeah, could you just tell us like the, you know, the origin story of Wayfinding Academy? And then I watched your TED Talk and I was like, I'm just going to put that link in the description. Just,
yeah,
that's like, we should just do that there and then just talk about more of like the, you know, the less character stuff, I guess, or, you know, the more things that you'd actually want to talk about with wayfinding. But like,
fun fact, today is the anniversary of the day I gave that talk.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it just popped up on Facebook today as like, remember 2 years ago, you know what? I was like, oh wow.
That is crazy. What? Yeah, gosh, it's weird how time flies. Like when you said, oh, like we've known each other for like 10 years. I was like, 10 years? It's like, no, not 10, but I was like, oh, now, yeah. Like 10, that's crazy. Time zooming by.
Yeah.
And then speaking of zooming by, you said wayfinding is, you're in year 5 or you're done. You've been open for 5.
We're in year 5 with students. We cheated. So we've actually been around. So in February will be our 6th birthday as an organization. So, but that first year, what we call year 0, we had no students yet. You know, it was like our getting ready year. Like we had to find a building and we had to go through state authorization. We had to recruit our first students. So we've been around for 6 years as an organization, but 5 years with like actual students here in the building with us. Got
it. That's just bananas to think. That's just crazy. Can we talk a little bit about, I don't know that I have this huge outreach, but for those young people, I mean, I guess I do run a volleyball academy with people in high school, right? And potentially being told things they've always been told, like, well, like after high school, you got to go to college, and you're like, that's just what you do. And maybe they've never known about Wayfinding Academy, and maybe they could be a good fit. And is there a good, what's like the Michelle Jones way of like, here's what you should do. Like if at all you're interested in what you're hearing, like you should go to our website, click this link, do these things. Is there like a thing that people should do, young people, like people in high school, or I guess they don't have to be in high school. It could be anybody, really. For any human who wants to learn more, I guess, or take the first steps, how would they do that?
Well, I guess probably doing what you just talked about, watching that TEDx talk, because it's in like 14 minutes, it explains both what wayfinding is, so someone would know whether it's like a good match for them or somebody they know. But I also talk about what led me to start it, which is like the broken higher education system and all of the myths that we tell young people in high school about like the only path to success. And so I'd say watching that is a quick like 14-minute way to get the whole thing. And then if that's like seems interesting, then yeah, the website is where we keep everything really up to date. And there's a section at the top, like if you go to the top, it says like the wayfinding experience. And there's information about becoming a student and what classes you would take, what that would be like, who our faculty are. And there's like a little video, a campus tour video that we filmed. Cool. We filmed a new one during the pandemic because we realized the old one just looks weird when you watch it in the current era of social distancing. Cause it's like, you know, all these, so our lead matchmaker went through the building by himself during the pandemic and was like, okay, here's what wayfinding is like. And with no one in it.
And lead matchmaker is your better version of like academic advisor.
No, he's our better version of like the admissions office.
Admissions office, yes, that's right.
Because that's part of like the problem is that like if we were talking to high schoolers, I feel like they know this better than anybody, that they feel like they've lived their whole life on this journey where they're just like checking this box, jumping through this hoop, doing this thing to prove themselves worthy, that someone else has said, this is how you prove yourself worthy. Like you get these good grades or this good test score, or you get into this fancy college, or like you do this thing that some external society, without even knowing you as a person, says, oh, this is the way you prove your worthiness. And so, and the whole admissions thing in colleges, it's like you have to take a test, you have to write an essay. Now they have the common application, which I understand how that's like helpful in terms of streamlining things for the applicants and the colleges, but like it's even more treating you cookie cutter, right? Like you don't even get the chance to express yourself. You just like fill out this thing once and then click send to a bunch of places. It's like it's like dehumanizing on multiple levels. So
it's a little icky. It feels it's when you get past the convenience, perhaps you're like,
right.
Oh, just a little icky. Yeah. Don't feel good.
And then the whole thing is like, you wait to see if you're going to get accepted, right? So like, are you good enough to be accepted, or are you going to be rejected? Like just the language around it is a freaking mess. And so when we created wayfinding, that was one of our intentional choices from the beginning, is that we have a matchmaker and his job is to figure out if this is a good match. So like if somebody comes to us and says, hey, I want to learn more about wayfinding, he's like, great, let's talk. What are you interested in? What are you passionate about? What do you want to do with your life? Like, tell me about your educational experience so far. And so he's trying to look at, are you a good match for us? And are we a good match for you? Like, can we actually help you do what you want to do in your life? And so we don't accept or reject people. We invite people to join us, and then they get to decide whether to accept our invitation or not. So like, we just change the language around it because it's just, I mean, young people, high schoolers, they know this better than all of us, this like pressure that they feel and how it's all crap, but they don't know what else to do instead. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's usually the problem, is that
I know what they
not
can
given
do.
Options.
I've got exactly somebody they could talk to.
Yes. And I feel like wayfinding is a really good match for a lot of people, in particular, if they want to do something with purpose, that's like purpose driven. They want to figure out who they are, what they care about, what their passion is. I mean, that's the class I, taught at Concordia and elsewhere before that.
Oh yeah.
And like, if you want to connect with that and then figure out what to do with that, wayfinding is a good match for you. If you already know, like, I want to be an accountant, or I want to be a lawyer, or I want to be this very specific thing, where there is a very clear path to do that, then your best option is probably to go ahead and take that path, but still connect with your why first. Like still do something. And right now we're offering, during the pandemic, we were like, how do we keep helping? We used to do this like more in person, but now we offer all these online workshops that we're calling the Pandemic Ate My Plan. And it's like the 5 whys, right? It helps people connect with
Yes.
their why and figure out their next steps. But I mean, for some people, they should probably just start working or start their own business or travel the world for a while first, or go to a trade school, or, you know, whatever they have so many options. It's just they're not presented with all those options when they're in high school.
Love it. Yeah. Stop planning and just start doing. Yeah. And I don't know why this Chris Gillable was like so far back in my brain, but for whatever reason, something you just said shot that memory up. And I don't know that even Chris Gillable said that phrase, but for some reason I have those. Maybe he's just the kind of person that I associate with that phrase. Like just go, just like work, and then figure out the plan later. But I did have a question
I don't know if
about.
he said that phrase, but that is partly how he lives his life. That's for sure. Like, as somebody who's worked with him for years, like, totally. He's like, I have this idea. I'm going to give it a try, and I'm going to learn by doing. And if it doesn't work, that's cool. I learned something, and now I know something else, right?
There we go. Sweet.
But he's always coming from his core. Like, he spent the time to figure out his core why, you know, which is to help people create their own freedom in their lives, mostly in their work life. And so I think that's the key, is to like figure out your core why, which I think you've done that work too. So now, like, everything you do, whether it's a volleyball academy or coaching or this series, it's all coming from that same place.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, which I think is important. And I think it's a concept that people have a hard time like wrestling with, and I haven't done enough research as to why people have a hard time like like, you know, people are just like, what do you mean? Like what? Like why? Or like, why don't you just have like a job? You know, like it's like, why? Like, how come you don't just fit into like this box that I've like accepted over and over in my mind? I don't want to lose this point because I do want to ask you about it. We had talked about the difference of like the language that you use, like you don't accept or reject people, and the matchmaker does a lot of the work to figure out if an invitation needs to be sent to this human. What are the times where like, oh, like this isn't a great fit? Is it just like what? Because in my mind, right, I'm like, well, obviously this sounds amazing. Everybody would want to do it, right? It's like, is it just like a capacity thing? Like, yeah, gee, holy smokes, we have 10,000 people. Like we'd love to help 10,000 people. We just don't have the logistics for that. You know, like, is that like a main concern, or what's like the non-invitation list look like, I guess?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so one of them is the example I just gave, like, where is somebody has a very clear, like I remember in our very first year with our very first batch of applicants that this young woman, she was amazing, Zoe. And she and I got to know each other, and she really wanted to be like a forensic accountant. And I was like, I cannot help, like, wayfinding, there is a clear path. Like, okay, if you want to do that, then you should do the, you know. So I helped her get connected to some people to talk to about like their path and how they became. And so I was like, you should just do that, because wayfinding we're a 2-year college on purpose. We're a 2-year college because I think in 2 years you can really figure out what you want to do with your life and start doing it. You might decide that the next thing you need to do is to go to a 4-year college, which is fine. You'll have an associate's degree, you go to a 4-year college, you complete your, you know, college education, and then you keep going, right? That's fine. But for most people, you can like not go to college after that, like a 4-year college, and just do a 2-year college and then start doing what you want to do. So if for her more direct, clear path, because she knew what she wanted, was to do that, then I would say do that. And we didn't invite her because we thought we could help her a different way. Now that still happens sometimes, where we get people who, like last year we got someone who really wanted to be a marine biologist, and we're like, that sounds awesome. And we talked to her for a while, but we were like, we can't help you directly become a marine biologist. So here are some other ideas.
Sure.
But the other thing that we've encountered lately is that, I mean, we're a small college. Yeah, during the COVID pandemic, we have had some capacity issues because there's rules about, we still do everything in person because we're small enough that we can still do all of our classes in person with masks and social distancing and windows open, which is freaking cold in the winter, but we do it.
I bet.
We do it. We bought a bunch of space heaters to help out, you know, and blankets,
Figure it
and
out.
fuzzy socks for all the students. So we only temporarily do we have like the capacity issue. Otherwise, we can figure that out. We can figure out how to be 2 or 3 times the size we are now if we need to in our current building. But we're not like a mental health services organization. And part of why I think people are attracted to wayfinding in the first place is they can just 100% be themselves. So, and they can show up and be themselves, and they might be super brilliant and curious humans who are really good at self-directed education that were not seen as valuable humans in the traditional education model. And so they find us and they like can come here and be alive and be themselves and be whatever, which is terrific. So we end up attracting a lot of students who identify as LGBTQ+. We've gotten a number of transgender students. We've got a lot of people who did alternative, like unschooling or homeschooling or an alternative high school, or dropped out of college because they didn't feel like it was a good match for them. And then they come to wayfinding because they still want to learn and they still want to go to college, but not like a normal college. So we're great and we're fully equipped to deal with all of that stuff. If a student comes with lots of mental health needs, we're not fully equipped to handle that. We have guides, so every student gets a guide who's like their accountability partner and academic coach that they meet with every week. So it's like our better version of an academic advisor.
Sure, yeah.
They meet with this person every week for the whole 2 years that they're here. And that person can be super helpful, but they're not mental health experts. They're not therapists.
Yeah.
So if a student is coming here and doesn't already have that and needs that, but doesn't already have that in place, we usually we don't not invite them necessarily, but we usually tend to ask them to like get that set up first.
Sure.
Like to like make sure that they've got that covered first, and then they can come here. Just because, I mean, going to college, and our average age of our students is 22. So they usually have a little bit of life experience after high school in some form. But just coming to college and doing something like this is going to be a big life transition. And if you need mental health support while going through any major life transition, that's a thing that you want to have in place. And that's just probably healthy for us of all people of all ages. Should probably have that support.
Absolutely. Well, I was just going to say, you know, as I continue to learn more about mental health too, like being guided toward those resources is probably the most valuable thing to do for somebody. And you might come across someone who like, that's the first time they've ever been guided to some kind of resource like that, you know? So yeah, that totally makes sense. That's pretty important work. Do guides have like a limit of how many, are they called students or humans?
Yeah. We do use the word students, yes.
Got it, cool, yes, sweet. Do the guides have like a limit of how many students they can help? Or is it truly like one-on-one? Like that's a lot of guides, I would assume.
Yeah, right now we have 6 guides and they're amazing. And it ranges. We've got one guide that's currently only working with 2 students and one guide that's working with 6.
Cool.
6 is probably, we've learned over the years that 6 is probably the maximum that one guide can handle because it's a really intense personal one-on-one relationship.
No.
And if all of their students are doing great, that's fine. But if some of their students start
struggling. Can I pause
yeah.
you? I just shout out to all the advisors I've ever had in my life. But when you were like, yeah, like 6 is the max, like it's a really intense personal relationship. Literally the thought that came screaming out of my mind was like, no, it's not. Like academic advisors are extremely personal. Like I just, but then I'm laughing right. and I had to stop you because I was like, that is just there it is. Like there's the proof right there. Like, oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah. You're right though. I mean, if you've only been in traditional college environments, it's not a highly intense one-on-one relationship. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have known a lot of the academic advisors from Concordia, especially the ones that were there when you were there, and they are wonderful humans who I'm friends with, and they care a lot about students. And you probably talk to them a lot more than like traditionals, like most students at Concordia did. But I think
bothered, talk to
bothered them,
them,
talk to them, whatever.
stop them from working. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of
But
things I did.
I mean, I think their official actual job expectation is to meet with students, like once a year or once a semester.
I don't know.
It's not very often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have no
And
idea.
I saw a statistic a few years back that like at Portland State University, the typical academic advisor there, I think it was something like has 600 students assigned to them. Something like that. It's some insane number. Like it is mathematically impossible for them to meet with all those students in an academic year. So we do not do it that way. We do it very differently here.
Those you'll have to remind me about this, this magical 150 number that's sort of in cases like your tribe, right? And as soon as you get more than that, it's like impossible to have all the benefits of being in a tribe. But yeah, that might be the golden number, like 150. As soon as you eclipse that, like you're not a student. They don't have 600 students. They have 600
names or
names and files they need to check off, like how you talk about your TED Talk. Yeah. Which is, I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to be dramatic, but like the sad reality of like where higher education is at this point. I mean, like that's just where we're at, right? I mean, like, look, this is how we built ourselves up to this point. So this is what we have to do. So we got to deal with it. Like I'm assuming that's, as someone who is also in higher education, is that the same? Do you share that same viewpoint? Like, okay, this is just where we're at. And you're someone who's like, okay, let's continue to nudge change in the areas where we do want, this is how we want it to be. I mean,
yeah, I think what I'm trying to do is create. So that's why it was important to me to create an actual college. Like we are an accredited college that's gone through all the same state authorizations as any other college in the state of Oregon. And now we're going through the regional accreditation process, that big bureaucratic thing. And part of the reason why I didn't, at the beginning, people were like, why don't you just create like a gap year program or like a thing that you can embed in current colleges where it's like you do this thing for a semester and then you do the rest of college like normal. I was like, yeah, okay, I could see that. That would probably been the easier path than doing it this way. But like, I did it this way because I believe that there is a better way to do college, and that if I can set up a college that like looks and acts differently, but abides by all the same regulations, all the same standards, confers a degree at the end that's the same as any other college, then it will give other colleges a little bit more like pause, maybe, to be like, wait. And honestly, our guide program is the thing that's gotten the most attention from other colleges, because colleges have come to visit us and been like, so wait, you do academic advising, how? And I explain it all and I show them how we do it. And they're like, it's a huge investment in people. I mean, you have to hire a bunch more people depending on the number of students you have, but they're like, yeah, I guess we could do something more like that than what we do right now. So academic advising, I think, is one of the copyable things that wayfinding does that literally any college in the country could do.
Now that we're saying it out loud, like, why is it called academic advice? Like, why is it called academic advising? Like, why are you an academic advisor? Like, why?
I mean, their main job, as I understand, and I was one at one of the colleges I taught at, they asked the faculty to be the academic advisors. So they like also had a counseling office and stuff like that students could go to. But my main job as an academic advisor was that I got like a report every semester of like which classes the student had completed, where they were on progress to graduation, what they had left to do. And my only job was to meet with them, make sure they understood that, and like check off the boxes to make like that's, and I of course did more than that, because
that sounds like we said, all respect to academic advisors. That sounds like an academic assistant or an academic secretary.
Yeah. Yes. And
here's the updates. Here's what you got to know. Make sure you do this. Okay, go do it. Good luck.
And my best guess is that it arose out of a need. So most colleges have made this process so complicated and unnecessarily complicated, like the process of choosing a major and all the paperwork. And like, you know, when you have a core curriculum that everybody has to take, like a general education thing, and then you have classes for your major, and then you have classes for a minor. And like, they've just made it so complicated. And it's not in normal person language. And especially when first generation students are going to college, like they don't have anybody in their family to help them through this process. It's just confusing. And this is all this weird, nerdy behind the scenes higher ed stuff. But like the accrediting agencies have a rule that say that you need to try to do everything you can in your power as a college to make sure that students graduate within 150% of the designated time. So like if you're a 4-year college, that's 6 years. If you're a 2-year college, that's 3 years. And so when they count graduation rates, they only count them out for 6 years because that's what the regional accrediting agency has said counts as on-time graduation. So I think what happened over the years is that colleges built these more and more and more and more complex things that was like less and less and less human, and all the bureaucracy that came with it. And then they had to put something in place to make sure that they were abiding by their accrediting agency's requirement that they got people graduated in time. And they figured, well, if we meet with them every time they register for classes and make sure they're registering for the right classes that check the boxes, then we can say we've done our part to make sure they graduate on time. That's my guess.
It seems like most things, right? Which I'm sure Wayfinding Academy has a likened process. It's like, okay, like here's the idea, like higher education. Okay, cool. It's like, well, what do we have to do? Okay, we have to do this thing. Okay, cool. We have to do this thing, and then at a certain point, right? There's so many things stacked on top of each other and weaved together, right? And then someone starts going like, wait, like why are we doing? You know, what's going on? It doesn't work. And it seems as if instead of just like going back a few layers, it seems like we've just, okay, we'll just add a new layer on top of it, or like we'll add another thing, or we'll just paint it a little prettier, and then you know, whatever. And it's like it's just weird amalgamated mess of like, it's too far. Like we can't go back. You know, we can't do that because then we'd have to do that. It's like, well, we can't do that because it's that. It seems as though Wayfinding Academy has also participated in that process of like, this is great, this is great, this is great. Oh wait, hold on. But it seems like you've had some kind of important self-evaluation or a team evaluation periods to like, does that work? Does that not work? And I mean, is that part of your guys, whatever the, I don't know, executive staff? I don't know what people, you know, you and the homies,
Right.
do you and the homies, you like weave that into your process of like, okay, we got to like make sure things are working? Or we just kind of like, yeah, like things work. Wayfinding Academy is great. Like, let's just keep this good, you know?
Yeah, I think this is probably the thing. So we call it our crew here. So it's like me and my crew. Yeah.
Got it.
So I think we do two things. One is that we culturally, we make all our decisions together. So we have a weekly crew meeting for 2 hours where we discuss everything that's happening. So every crew member knows like what Jonathan is doing as the lead matchmaker, what Ty is doing in terms of marketing and communications. We know what Lauren is doing in her lead guide role, or what Erica is the director of equitable learning. So we know what everybody is doing. And we contribute ideas to each other's work. So I think that's one of the cultural things we do that helps, because that means anybody at any point can say, oh, wait, hey, why are we doing this again? Or this isn't working, or is there a better way to do this? So it's not just me who has to ask that, or someone, so anybody can ask that. The other thing is we try very hard. We're not always successful, but we try very hard to do what we ask students to do, which is start with why, and like always go back to the why. So I always tell our faculty, like, if you're going to teach something, a topic, you're going to ask them to read something, you're going to whatever, be prepared for them to ask you why. And if you can't answer why, then you shouldn't be asking the students to do whatever that is that you're asking them to do. So we try that with ourselves too, right? So, and you know, this past year during the pandemic has been super interesting because like we did have to do most of one term online, which was very anti-wayfinding. And then we made the commitment to coming back in person, and we've been doing things in person ever since. But we've had to ask why for each piece of everything. Like, why are we willing to do this online? Why are we not willing to do that? Why, you know? And so I think when we get lost or when we get a little bit confused as to whether something is adding bureaucracy or adding unnecessary whatever, someone says, wait, let's go back to why we're doing this again. And as long as we can keep going to the core why, we're do okay. We also try to keep things as simple as possible. So like from a student's experience, they do not know. I mean, they know if they want to, if they read the college catalog and they need this information, they have it. It's not like they don't have access to it. But we do not talk to students about like that you need to get 90 quarter credits to graduate and you need this many credits from this and this many credits. Like we don't do that.
Mhm.
We just like the guides know that and the registrar knows that. And the students know, well, I take these 9 classes, I take 12 labs, I do 2 internships, I meet with my guide and do that every term and then I graduate. Like it's simple. Like anybody in the wayfinding community can be like, oh, what do I do to graduate from wayfinding? Oh, I do this. Whereas like at a traditional college, if you're like, what are the requirements for graduation? You need like spreadsheets to figure the thing out, right? So not the case here. So we just try to remember our why and keep things
literal
simple.
spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Literally. What's your name again? How do you spell that?
Yeah,
Hey,
exactly.
and again, all love to the academic advisors I've had in my life. I love you guys. Your shortcomings are typically not a product of you, who you are as a human being.
No,
but
it's not the people as humans, it's the system. It's completely
correct.
the system. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking
Do
of,
you,
go ahead.
I have a question
Sorry.
for you, if that's okay.
Yeah,
Because
yes.
you're working in higher education as well, like not on the academic side, but on the athletic as a coaching side. I
Yes.
imagine that you hear from players that I imagine what you get to hear is their frustration with all of this. And you get to watch as they try to navigate, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, all of these systems and all this bureaucracy. How is that? How is that for you as someone who kind of is like aware of how messed up it is, and yet you still work in that environment and have to successfully help these students get through it so that they can continue to, play volleyball or whatever?
I just started at Lewis and Clark, so I really don't have enough information or data to comment adequately on those students in that situation. But I do have a lot of experience at Concordia, being a student myself and essentially being staff or faculty. The first thing I thought of was, it's always like on the extremes. It feels like
Yeah.
OMG, hate this, like my academic advisor totally messed this up and she messaged me 1 week to the semester ends, and like now I have to like take this class and that's going to mess this thing up, or it just fell through the cracks kind of, and that really hurts me. And then another piece where it's like, holy smokes, totally love so and so, they're great, really want to hang out with them all the time, not hang out with them, but really, that's the person to go to. Like, I had such a great experience with that person. They made it easy or understandable or whatever. There's not a lot of like, yeah, just normal. Like, just went in, did my thing, and it just made sense. And then I do think there's a little bit of like, over time, what seems to be like this lulled sense of like, well, that's just what we have to do. Like,
Yeah.
well, like we just have to register for these classes like that. Like, that's just how we do it. And then there always is a little bit of pushback by the curious ones of like, why? Like, why do I have to do that or this or that? And then there's the ones who are like very like, I have fully accepted the system. This is what you need to do to succeed. Do not to like, deviate from the plan. Like, you guys are messing everything up. So there's a little bit of that as well. I'm trying to think of what else. I mean, I think that would be the general, from my eyes, seeing the students is how they operate. I guess I was just gonna say there's a lot of like just like volleyball stuff, but I mean, truly, I mean, gosh, we're seeing those kids sometimes more than they see their, if we're talking about like a high school coach, your mom might wake up at 4:30 to go to her job right? And then your dad might not get home till 7. So you're seeing your coaches more than you see in your own family, you know what I mean? So the opportunity we have as coaches, you know, and I think the decisions that I've made in my coaching career is like, you know, it's so easy to be like, I'm a volleyball coach. It's like, it's not really my perspective on it. It's like, I coach human beings. Like we play volleyball, like that's fun, right? But like if I were to coach soccer, I wouldn't do it any different. If I coached basketball, I wouldn't do it any different. I'd put the people first, put character first. I'd do my best to help, you know. I would want to be there to help them, and I'd figure out how to help them, and then mess up on the way and say sorry and figure out how to do it better, and then you know, have fun playing the sport. But I think, anyway, off my soapbox, yeah, like the higher education and, you know, how students and their perceived attitude toward academic advising in the system. Yeah, I keep in my mind, I can't get off this feeling of like the extremes, you know. It's sort of just like, I'm gonna fight it and be mad, or I'm just gonna accept it and just not, you know, not challenge. There's not like a healthy medium. It would seem like there's no options. And kind of to pivot, I don't know why I thought of this, but when you were saying like, oh, people are like, oh, why don't you just start like a gap year program? Why don't you just like embed yourself in college programs? I thought like, oh, that's just such like the frozen food version of what Michelle Jones is trying to do. You know, like it's such like wow, like your recipe is so great. Like, and you're like, yeah, I'm so passionate about it. Like, blah, blah, blah. I love being in the restaurant. You should just totally make like a frozen version and just sell it everywhere, which is like, probably could probably be very rich and probably, you know, be great. Because it does seem like there could be some kind of programming that, I mean, think about all the programming people do anyway. Like, oh, well, okay, we got to do sexual safety advocacy. Like every college, we have to do that. We got to do, you know, alcohol and drug programming, right? We got to do that. People got to attend the things, you know, whatever meetings, you know, that you're required to go to, everybody in your dorm. I mean, it sort of seems like you could go up the alley of like, right, like you know, and I love the name wayfinding too. I mean, I think that it resonates with a lot of us sojourners out here. Like, you know, like, yeah, like we gotta find our way. You know, like what the heck, like that's not prioritized, perhaps, and I would assume that you feel like that's also not prioritized. Like, it's not about you finding your way. It's about you walking this path that we've pretty much already laid out for you. So if you stray off the path, it's pretty much your fault, but it's not part of the way. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you just said so many good things that yeah. Well, okay. I hadn't thought of it as I hadn't thought of it using the word sojourner before, but I think you're right that and I had forgotten. I'm grateful for this. I've been doing this so long. We don't get totally, when I taught at Concordia and every place else I ever taught, I got that spectrum too of people who'd question everything. Like you were one of those people like, why are we doing this? What is the point of this? What are we, you know, asks all the questions, is super curious. But then you also definitely get the other end of people who are just like, nope, I'm gaming this. Like, this is how the system works. I'm good at it. I'm just doing it this way. I'm not even asking a question. I don't get those anymore. Those people do not come to wayfinding, which is, so it's been a long time. Those people don't come to wayfinding to work or to be a student. So like all the people who work at wayfinding are also the people who are, you know, sojourners, or they're wanderers. They're people who, you know, want to always be finding their path and their purpose and walking that. So I think that's kind of, it's a neat realization for me, is that I'm over on that end all the time now, which is kind of fun. But one of the, so like, if all we ever do with this is start a teeny college in Portland, Oregon, then it's like, that's cool. That's great. And we definitely will have had impact on a lot of people's lives through that, but it's not really going to accomplish the second portion of the mission, which is like that nudging change in higher education. And not everybody wants to move to Portland. I mean, with the exception of the current year because of the pandemic, historically, like 70% of wayfinding students move from other parts of the country to Portland to go to wayfinding. But not everybody can move here. Not everybody wants to move here. Right now, during the pandemic, we're doing, at least temporarily, we may keep it because we're at least, we did it once to see how it went, and we're doing it a second time. We may keep doing it, but we're doing a program, a virtual program called Far Away Finding, where they do Wayfinding 101, which is that like, who are you? What do you want to do with your life? What is your purpose course online. So they do that virtually, and they have a guide who they meet with virtually. And then if they later want to come here in person after the pandemic, they can. And we have like 4 people who've already said they're going to do that, which is great. What I'm trying to think about now, though, is what happens next. So back to your thing about the law of 150, that special magical number.
Yeah.
When we started wayfinding, we got a building on purpose that will only let us, maximum size we can ever get is 150, because like there's all this stuff that says that if you get to be bigger than that, you can't have a real community where you actually have human relationships. I actually, now that I'm doing this, think that 150 is too big. Like if we had 150 people here, no, that's way too big. So we're now thinking more like we could have 60 to 80 students here, plus the faculty and staff and guides to support that. And that's about it. And that would all fit in this physical building. So I'm starting to think about when we get to that point, or when we even get close to that point, what do we do? And I think what we're going to try to do is start other wayfinding, small wayfindings, because I think there's power in being small and able to interact with your local environment and your local community. Like we're going to start a second program. Right now, we only have one program. It's called Self and Society. So you come here, you get a degree after 2 years in Self and Society, which means that you've spent half the time exploring self and half the time learning about society and what's going on. So put those together. We're going to start a second degree, major, whatever you want to call it, like a second program, I don't know, that's on social justice and community activism, because it's Portland and there are a lot of people in Portland who we can learn from and learn with to do those kinds of things. So we're going to start that second program here. And then so that also it gives us the practice of trying to replicate our model with another program and seeing what we learn. And then that'll prepare us to start a second location someplace else in the country. And I have thoughts on where I think that should be. I want it to be like a small place where it's really easy to genuinely build a community with people, where the community can be involved, because we've always said that we are a community college, and we believe that community and college should be woven together. So the idea would be that then we go to another place and we would offer the core program of Self and Society, because that could be offered anywhere. But then we could also offer a program in whatever is like the local expertise that that place has. So one option is, maybe I used to live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I love it. Really want to go back there. Know a lot of people there still. And there's a lot of wisdom there about sustainability and sovereignty. And so thinking about going there and having a program that focuses on that. But a bunch of people have told me they think Hawaii would be another good place.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I visited there several times. I've never lived there. You know way more than I do, and like know about wayfinding's culture and values. Like, is it a thing that would fit well there?
Michelle, I'm a little afraid to unleash this episode on my parents. So my parents have been involved in education a lot for as long as I can remember. That's just what they've been doing. My dad's been a principal, my mom's been a teacher, they've been involved in education. So they, like I said, I'm a little afraid to unleash this on them, because I'm like, right, they would just eat this up. Like it would be all consuming. I am sure. So I am sure I have someone I could, send your way. This podcast might have to come out sooner than I had wanted to release it, but this conversation is too good. I think the people, I definitely could put you in touch with my parents for sure, my dad specifically. And the thing that I think is most important that you said is just that connection with the community. Like, we are a community college, and like So often the Hawaiian culture, the people of Hawaii, we always feel so there can be a sense of like, well, we're just like here to be used, so to speak.
Mhm.
I don't know. Like, oh, like of course, like you'd want to come and start a community college in Hawaii. Like, why doesn't everybody, want to come here and start a community college, right? So, but I think after that sort of hard exterior surface, most Hawaiians, have a deep sense of aloha and love for the community, and what that kind of wayfinding academy looks like in Hawaii, or with some sort of Hawaii ties, I think is I don't know, some kind of beautiful vision. I mean, if we think about how Hawaiians originally came to the Hawaiian Islands, they found their way using the stars to navigate them to the Hawaiian Islands. I mean, there's already a beautiful video I'm playing in my mind of like wayfinding and voyaging and all that stuff. Talk about marine biology. Boom! You might
Then
not
we
want to
could
come to
help
the
her.
you might not want to come to the Portland wayfinding. Okay? If you go down Hawaii, you absolutely can. And yeah, I think there are a lot of people with big hearts that are ready for this kind of system, or place to be and to give themselves to. And shoot, I'm all about it. Maybe you're probably the person to do it, Michelle Jones. Shoot.
I mean, I would need some help. I mean, I would definitely need like a team who could help me start one there.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
so that's for sure. When I talked to educators in New Mexico about this idea, I did a road trip a couple of years ago and met with all of the educators I could possibly get meetings with. And one of the things, they said a similar thing. I think, especially native New Mexicans have had a similar experience to what you're describing with native Hawaiians, where it feels like you've got outsiders coming in and saying, oh, I'm going to like use this for what I need this place to be, rather than respecting the heritage.
Mm-hmm.
And so they said
I like New Mexico so much more already. Shoot.
It's an amazing place.
Yeah.
It's so great. And they said that first. And then they also said that the investment in New Mexico historically in higher education has been minimal. I mean, there's basically two options. You can go to one of the two massive state universities that's, like tens of thousands of students, where you get a very impersonal education, or you can go to I think there are one or two private colleges in New Mexico where you get a smaller liberal arts kind of focus education. And that's it in the entire state. So they end up having a lot of people who don't really feel like they have an option. Like their only option to go to college is that if they want to stay at home, or they have to leave home, which a lot of them, because of cultural and tradition and heritage, don't want to have to leave their families to go to college.
Yeah.
And they want to be able to stay. So educators in New Mexico have said that bringing in alternatives that would enable people to stay home and stay local and have a more personalized one-on-one human scale college experience would be valuable. I have no idea if that's the case in Hawaii or not. I mean, I get the feeling from the little research I've done and visiting there that it's a similar system where there are several really good, high quality state universities that you can go to, but there's not a lot of other options if you want to stay in your home state.
Yeah, there's not a lot of options, which sort of creates this. I mean, that's part of the reason I went to Concordia in the first place, or left Hawaii in the first place, was like there just seemed to be this trend of like, oh, so and so went away for college, and like within a year or two they came back, and then they just did nothing after that. And then so in my mind I was like, bro, I'm like getting out of here. Like I am meant for more. I'm going to pursue more. Like I'm going to do this thing. And then in some ways we're all different. In some ways we're not all different, because after like the first semester I was like, screw this. Like I'm out of here. I'm going back home. Like this is crazy. But ended up, and 10 years later, here we are on this podcast. But
I remember that conversation. Like that was one of my most vivid memories of knowing you, is that conversation where you were in that moment and you came to my office and you're like, oh my gosh, can we just talk? Because like, I think I've had it. And you're like, I think I have to stop doing this. So
I can imagine one office that I've had a conversation with you in. Like I'm seeing it in whatever building I can't even remember the name of it anymore, but yeah. I mean, but that's just part of the experience, part of the journey. It is part of my journey, I guess is what I should say.
It is. And I think what I remember about that time for you is that you had to figure out your answer for yourself of whether to stay or whether to leave. You had to get at your why. Like, why did I come here in the first place? What do I want to get out of this? And my recollection is then that changed. Like, you ended up deciding to stay at Concordia and continue on. But from that point on, from what I saw, you significantly changed what you prioritized and changed what you were getting out of it and focusing on. Like, you were no longer there just sort of like going through the motions, because you had found what you really wanted to care about while you were there.
I don't know that the video is called Find Your Why. It might be Simon Sinek's video. It might be called Golden Circles or whatever. I'm not sure. Or the Golden, something. But
I think it's the power of why, right?
Power of why. I'm sure it is. I would trust your opinion. But you might have been the first person to expose me to that content, or at least, if you weren't the first, you were somebody who brought it out of me in that moment, which was very, very impactful and important, because it's still impactful to this day. I still operate with that in mind all the time, which I'm sure is not, I'm sure it is woven into the curriculum. Is it called curriculum?
It's like yes. It's called.
I gotta make sure. I don't want to misspeak.
You're right.
I don't want to misspeak.
We do use some of the normal words like students, faculty, curriculum, classes.
Yeah, nice.
Maybe that's
it. That's it though. Yeah.
They do graduate. They graduate. We have an orientation. Yeah, we have some normal words. Yeah.
Cool. Just enough to sort of disguise, all the people that need to be appeased above you to be like, what?
That's
is this what you need? Fine. We'll do whatever you need. Boom. Then we can really do what we do. Shoot, I don't even know where I just loved that, like, yeah, stick it to the man. Yeah. Whatever. I don't even know where I was going with that. But woven into the curriculum of wayfinding. Yeah, you said like that's like the whole thing. That's helping people find their why. Yeah.
And then figuring out what to do with it, because one of my frustrations when I taught at Concordia and every place else was that I could start that conversation with people, like with you. I could start that conversation of like, what is your why? And I could help you get to it. I could help you connect to your why. But then like my class was over and that was done. And now you're back into the rest of the traditional college, everything else after that. And I didn't get, I mean, in rare occasions when I would like form personal relationships and keep in touch and work on things in other ways, we got to keep that work going. But generally it was like done after the first piece of the conversation. But the harder part, as you know, is actually doing it, living the why, doing the things that are consistent with your core purpose. And I never got to do that in my teaching. So what's fun about wayfinding is the first course is Wayfinding 101, where they figure out the why. And then they have, a year and a half more of like starting to actually do it. So they do internships, they take like different courses, they do community projects, they do all this stuff, they build a portfolio. We don't have any tests and quizzes. So everything is like a self-directed project that you can make be about whatever you want to make it be about, that's about your why. So they get like, so by the time they graduate, they're already doing what they want to be doing in some form. Maybe then they have to go get a job or go to college, but
it's just kind of a weird thing, like to actually do the things.
Exactly. Traditional colleges do not do that at all.
That's just like a weird, for those who are, carving their own path out of traditional colleges like you were, we salute you and we appreciate you for doing your work. Absolutely. I need to wrap this up with you so that you can continue to, crush your day and live your life on purpose and kick all the butt. I'm assuming we all have to like go follow your Twitter now, since it's like your Twitter.
Because that's my new thing. Please.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Everybody below Michelle Jones Twitter. All of my 5 followers, which one is Michelle. So the 4 of the other of you who are watching this, go follow Michelle Jones. She'll be 4 follows richer on her Twitter. But maybe some final words from Michelle Jones. Is there anything that you're like, man, like I want to like final words or any kind of advice from me or anything that you're like, hey, if you know, the best way to just connect with Wayfinding Academy is, go to our website, blah, blah, blah. I would love for you to take the ending of this podcast and do whatever you want with it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, all the usual things, like definitely follow Wayfinding. If this is interesting, go to the website. You can follow Wayfinding and me personally on all of the social medias and reach out because we really like to make connections and have relationships. Like we do things on a genuine relationship basis. So if you want to talk more about higher education reform, you can reach out to me specifically. If you or someone you know would be a good match to be a student at Wayfinding, then reach out, and Jonathan on our matchmaking team, Jonathan, our lead matchmaker, will call you back or email you back and he'll have a conversation. So everything's just very relationship based here. So like, don't be afraid to just reach out and say hi and introduce yourself because you will hear back from one of us, guaranteed. So we're not like typical colleges where you might send something out into the void and then like never get anything back. So definitely do that. And I guess the other thing I'd say for you, but also for anybody is that like doing something that is not what everybody else is doing is hard. And it's like the sense that I get from you, and I know this is true for me and a lot of other people I know doing things that are a little bit out of the norm, is that like it's the only way to be. Like once you start doing your purpose-driven work, then like you just have to do it. Like it is the thing, it is like your calling, it is your purpose, it is your path. And sometimes you get off of it, or sometimes you get super tired, or sometimes you're like, wow, this is just too hard. And you have to take like a little break and take care of yourself and then regroup and then come back to it. But it's the most rewarding, like starting Wayfinding and doing purpose-driven work is the most rewarding thing I've ever done ever. And I can't imagine not doing it, even though it is by far the hardest thing I've ever done. Like on any scale of hardness, you give me a category of like challenge. This is the most challenging thing I have ever had to do. And it's the most amazing, and so I guess that's my advice for you is keep doing it, even when it's like, take a break and take care of yourself if you need to, but like keep doing it even when it's hard. And my advice for everybody else is to find that thing that they feel that way about. And like, we can help if they want help, but there's also a lot of other resources that can help you find that why and that purpose.
Sweet. Awesome. Amazing. I won't say thanks. I'll just say until we do this again.
Yes,
I'm just
please.
excited.
I would love it.
Excited to just continue the conversation with whatever when this podcast or this LiveAloha movement just blows up on social media, we just continue to use this platform for you to just take over higher education.
Yeah, that'd be great. If I can take over, then we'll be in good shape.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be awesome. That's gonna be an awesome moment. I'm gonna look back, be like, it spawned right here.
I love it. I
Awesome.
love it. It's
Awesome.
so good to get to talk to you too. Thank you so much.
Excellent to get to talk to you too. And until we talk again.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Hilo's such a rainy old town. I listen to the rain come down. Don't it fall so free?